Hello everyone, my name is Ms. Hernandez and I'm your new assistant principal. You can see me on the screen and you can see the computer screen simultaneously. This way we are both on the same page as to what the principles are, and this way we can all follow along with each other. So I thought it would be ideal for us to begin with an activity in which you write down your own 10 principles of learning or teaching. So I'm going to give you 5 to 7 minutes. Write down what you believe your 10 principles of learning and teaching are. How do you currently implement these 10 principles in your classroom? And if you think about a lesson that you've had last week, where have you incorporated any of these principles? It does not have to be all 10, but name a few principles in which you incorporated in your lesson last week. Then I'll give us an opportunity to turn and talk with our colleagues and share aloud some thoughts. I'm so glad we all had the opportunity to turn and talk and hear some really great principles out loud and some great ideas. So we're going to talk about the 10 principles of learning that I do expect to see in all our classrooms. It should be implemented in all grades and in every subject. So the first principle of learning is creating student rapport. And I know that this isn't an issue for any of our teachers here, but research says that it's really important for us to create student-teacher relationships in order to assure that we are able to influence our students' behaviors, we are able to allow our students to adjust socially, and we ultimately allow students to achieve academic goals. So when I do walk into your room, of course I expect you to know your student's name. It's really important that you call on them by their name. But I do want to see you use personally and culturally relevant examples in their classroom. I do want you to create comments and questions to your students that really allows me to get an understanding that you really know your students. You're actively listening to your students. And this is something that's commonly done in all classrooms, so I really shouldn't have an issue when I walk into any classroom seeing student rapport. The second principle that I should expect to see in your classrooms is ensuring that all students are getting or receiving timely feedback. So, of course, research says that feedback should be provided within minutes after the completion of a task. It should be provided relatively quickly. So, a way for us to assure that students are getting feedback is by providing some sort of written feedback, some sort of post-it comments or short conferences with our students to make sure that they are getting the most and they are learning where to grow. So this was adopted from an article from the Review of Educational Research by Haiti. The article is called The Power of Feedback. And I'm really not going to go over every single steps, but when we are providing feedback, I really want us to think some of the effective feedback follow-up questions that we can give our students is, where am I going? If the student thinks about where they're going with their goals, how they are going to achieve their goals, and where they are going next, this can really help improve student performance. So these kind of questions could be applied to the task, could be applied to the process, and ultimately students will begin to self-monitor, self-regulate when they think about these questions for forms of feedback. And your feedback should be as a form of conferencing, written form. I've seen teachers do audio forms of feedback, which is very helpful to students as well. Another principle that should be evident in classrooms is assuring that lessons provide rigor and some sort of scaffolding. So, of course, research says that teachers at some point shouldn't be responsible for all the learning that's going on. Teachers should assume responsibilities to the students. Although teachers will start off with their responsibility, ultimately it's the goal of the student. So this can be done in the form of Bloom's taxonomy. You can really follow that, as you can see here. We have Bloom's taxonomy where students start off with the basics. they start off with remembering and understanding and applying. So these lower forms of Bloom's taxonomy should be evident in your lesson in the beginning, but at some point within the lesson or the unit, students should be creating, students should be evaluating, and this is where we ultimately want to get our students at some point within the lesson and at some point within the unit. So we should have the proper scaffolds, but we should also assure that our content and our lessons are rigorous. Principle 4, and this is really going to make sure that we are rigorous, is by providing differentiated instruction through the process and the product, because if we do this, then we're allowing for all students to reach the same sort of rigor. So you can differentiate within within lessons and within units. It should be provided for students who need the extra scaffold, like research says, but some of the ways for us to differentiate is to make sure that we are having tiered activities in the process, to make sure that we do have flexible grouping, we do have inquiry-based or stations, where every station is a different skill that a student needs to know. And ultimately, you should be differentiating the product. So students should be, they should have tiered assignments or a different amount of assignments that they can do in order to meet their needs or their skill. They should have different resources that are appropriate for each student and proper arrangements. So, of course, we are going to give the gifted and talented student a complex text. We are going to give our struggling students enough scaffolds to ultimately be able to reach that same complex text or a slightly different complex text as the student that is gifted and talented. Principle 5 requires an active learning environment. This is something that I do see in most classrooms, so I don't think anyone will have an issue. The flipped classroom simply means that you're incorporating technology in your classroom. We do have Google Classroom, so many teachers use Google Classroom in order to flip their classroom, but there's multiple sorts of websites and apps that you can use in your classroom. When you have your students turn and talk like we just did in the beginning of the presentation, that's a way to create an active learning environment. So students are not hearing a 45-minute lecture from a teacher. Instead, they are actively engaged. They are looking at inquiry-based learning or project-based learning, because when students make connections to materials, they comprehend. When students are able to be engaged and they are able to use these various instructional methods, then they will have higher student achievement. So this is the research that Freeman notes as well. They're more likely to remember the work that they do with an active learning environment. Another principle that must be evident in a classroom is assuring that standards are on the board, because the research does state that clearly stated learning objectives guide students in managing their studies and is appropriate for assessments. So in any classroom, there must be at least a standard or an objective on the board, because explicitly stated and displayed learning objectives will allow for students to know how they are being assessed, what their goals are for the lesson or for the unit, and making sure that our standards or our learning objectives derived from the Common Core standards will be ideal. So assuring that our standards are very specific and achievable by our students, that they are observable. I can go into any classroom and assure that our students are meeting the stated standard and making sure that they're measurable. So it should be achievable for our students. So I should be able to walk into any room and be able to note whether a student has achieved it or not. A great way for students to know whether they have achieved the standard or the goal is by creating metacognitive questions within your lesson. So you can have 2 exit slips, maybe one assessing skill, one assessing where they know that they've met the objective or the standard. This will really allow students to make sure that they know and they manage their own learning. Principle 7 is motivation and engagement, which is really important. So we can make sure that our students are motivated and find meaning in tasks and stay relevant to activities. Guthrie argues that choice is important. It's a powerful force that allows students to really take ownership of what they do in the classroom and how they work. So collaboration is a way for us to motivate our students. So your classroom should be collaborative. It should be an active learning environment to intrinsically motivate student. There should be some form of student choice. This can be a multiple entry point, maybe 2 do nows instead of 1 do now, or 2 exit slips instead of 1 exit slip. We have multiple student choice. 2 activities or a choice of activities where students can choose from. Making connections to student lives will ensure that they are engaged or that they are motivated. And having students really interact with one another, share discussions. This will assure motivation and engagement is really relevant in the classroom. And ultimately, again, we're having students achieve standards and goals and increase student achievement by encouraging them, by motivating them and engaging them properly. Principle 8, administration and teachers believe that there should be some sort of accountability for students and for teachers. So research says that teaching is what teachers do and learning is what students do. Therefore, students and teachers are engaged in different activities. So yes, teachers, we should do the teaching, but students should be accountable for their own learning. So assuring that students are following teacher expectations, assuring that students are correcting each other if they are not following expectations, to assure that social and behavioral problems are addressed and they are motivated. This is an important aspect of making sure students are accountable for their own learning. Making sure we have a student-centered approach is also important. We want a student-centered approach. We do need students to collaborate. We do need student work to be dependent on each other, student-led discussion and ideas, because research says that students benefit when they have collaborative learning environments. This is reflected in their learning and it impacts their actions. So we want our students to benefit by working collaboratively, and the work should be dependent on one another. Finally, Principle 10, and it's always the last, because assessments are always last, unless it's formative assessments, but we should have meaningful assessments and meaningful measures of learning, because formative assessment is a way to inform instruction. So what you do, you should have formative assessments in your lessons every single day, because your formative assessments are going to inform instruction. So when I walk into your room, I should see at least 1 to 2 forms of formative assessment in order to assure that your instruction for the next day is informed by what you teach. Whether that be classroom assessments or school level assessments, there should be some form of assessment that will help you plan and help you evaluate where students at or what you need to go over. So now that we discussed the 10 principles of learning that should be evident, and majority of us do these 10 principles anyway, now you are solidifying our 10 principles with research and by having an administrator solidify these 10 principles. What I want you to do is I want you to use a lesson from either last week or a lesson from next week. And I want you to now go back and show how you've incorporated these principles within your lesson. And I'll give you 5 minutes and then we will share. Now, if anyone was interested in the research, feel free. And if you have any questions, you can email me at ehernandez43@schools.nyc.gov. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope we have a good school year.